Welcome to Lawyer Business Advantage. This podcast is dedicated to helping attorneys earn more money, get better clients, and spend more time with family. I'm your host, Alay Yajnik, founder of Law Firm Success Group. Smart business guidance for small law firms begins in 3, 2, 1. And it's my pleasure to welcome to Lawyer Business Advantage Casita Simpson, founder and CEO of Simpson and Associates. Casita, how are you today?
I'm doing very well. How are you? Thank you for having me.
I'm doing great. Thank you for being on the show. I know it's taken a while for us to align our calendars, and I'm so excited you're here because we're going to be talking about systems and CRM. If you are a attorney and you haven't heard of CRM, do not be surprised. What it is it's a way to track your leads, but it can do so much more than that. And Casita, you're an absolute expert in this area. And so just by way of introduction, why should every law firm consider having a CRM system?
I love this question because I find myself answering it a lot, especially when I'm having conversations with prospects. And the truth of the matter is simplicity, centralization, focusing on what matters most, clients. That's what a CRM can do for you. It can free up a lot of time when you're looking at leads. When someone new comes into your business, you want to be able to identify who these people are, how many of them are coming in. Maybe you're using advertising. Maybe you want to, maybe you're in networking events and you want to see a return on your investment. Your CRM can do that for you. If you are only focusing on cases, it can do a lot even for that as well too, because if you have a new case and they just onboarded with you and you want to be able to create deadlines and make sure that certain things are being followed up with your growing team, and you want to make sure that everyone is aware of what their duties are, you can use the CRM to do all those things. There's so many, it's so robust. Like there's so many different things you could do with it, but to keep it simple, it just helps you keep things centralized and everyone within the company knows exactly what's going on.
And it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and it can do more and more things for
Yes.
your firm. So
Yes.
just so our audience is clear, because they get all these acronyms about different kinds of software thrown their way all the time.
Yes.
How would you differentiate between a CRM, so a client relationship management system,
Mm-hmm.
and a practice management system?
Mm-hmm.
Or do you?
I use them interchangeably from time to time because it really sometimes when you think about a tool like HubSpot, you think of HubSpot as a CRM. It's a
Yes.
robust, massive piece of software that you can utilize. But then you have your practice management system, and that is more centric to the legal industry and it's more specific to cases and matters that a firm is going to be taking care of on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly basis, that kind of thing. When they're coupled together, there are certain tools out there that have the biggest bang for your buck where you're getting both worlds met together, and that gives you the aspect of a HubSpot, so to speak, where all of your leads and everything are kept there. You can nurture them, you can send out campaigns, you can do even birthday reminders and sending out those things. But also when you convert that lead to a matter, because the system can do that, you're then having all of those practice management resources and tools. You can draft documents and be able to keep up with case files on that aspect. So they're sometimes used interchangeably, sometimes, but there are other times where, depending on the system, the two just marry up together. So you have
Yeah.
your lead side and then your practice management side.
And most practice management systems, there's a couple of exceptions, but most of the ones I've seen don't do a great job of managing leads specifically. Like they kind of start once the agreement is signed. There's a couple of exceptions like Clio Grow and things like that. What
Mm-hmm.
practice management systems have you seen that have that CRM kind of sales component integrated into them besides Clio?
Yeah. Yes. Locus is actually one of them. Locus has, and it differs from Clio. Shout out to Locus. It differs from Clio because you're not switching hats. You're not switching from a Clio Grow and then going into a Clio Manage. It's very different. Everything is together, and you have just a panel where you're focusing on where all your leads are. Once you convert it to a matter, then it's moving into the next space within that same system and it becomes a matter. But that's not the only one that has that. My case has it too. My case has the flexibility. It's not as robust as a system like Locus, but it does give you the ability to have your leads in one space and then also have your cases in another space. Depending on the system, Locus calls the matter aspect of it matters, and then my case calls that aspect cases. So depending on the tool you're using, but those are just some of the tools that are out there that has everything together.
Awesome. Well, it's great to hear that about my case. I didn't know that, so I'm glad to hear
Yeah.
they integrated that. And Clio Grow is not natively created in Clio. It's an acquisition they made several years ago and started using. So that's what most of my clients use when they think about a CRM.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the big challenges is they have this software, whether it's my case or Clio or Locus or something else, and they're using a fraction of its potential. When you typically work with a new client, what is it that you see?
First of all, if you're watching this or you're hearing this, please know that you're not alone. I just want to start there. You're not alone if you're only using a fraction of your system. It's something that is a wide known issue. And when I have conversations, I take it piece by piece. I find out what they're using, and then I ask, what is it that you're using another tool for? Like if you're using maybe, I don't know, Calendly, what are some of the things that you use Calendly for? And then I talk them through that, or maybe they have another appointment scheduling system. And I say, okay, well, what about if you were to use your system for that? Would you be okay with that? They say, yes, of course. I said, okay, that's something that your system can actually do for you. And you're not spending that extra money on a Calendly. No offense to Calendly, because I think it does serve a purpose. But when you're already spending money and investing so much time and energy and dollar spend into a case management system, you do want to get the most out of it. So that's one way. Also, I love Adobe. I love PDFs. And I know that there are people out there who use Adobe Sign to send out their agreements for signature, but the case management system can cover that too. So it's really just about uncovering and having a really deep conversation with the person to find out what are they using to keep their business running, because at the end of the day the firm is a business. What are they using to keep it running, and then what is it that they want to do, and how can the two be married up together? Because what I love about keeping things central is that you can forego certain other tools to make it work well together.
Absolutely. Just simplifying everything
Yes.
and using the software the way it was designed. We're really talking at the end of the day about saving money, which you mentioned with duplicate software, and also saving time. And if you're an attorney entrepreneur listening to this podcast, you know that I really prize time. It's our most valuable and precious asset because you
Yes.
can't save it up. Once it's gone, and you can't
Yes.
get more of it. So
Yes.
it's an incredibly precious resource, especially for attorneys that are high billers. Um, and so, Casita, when you're kind of walking through this with a potential client, how do you look at the potential value of implementation with regards to time and money?
Yeah. So the biggest thing for me is I find out where the pain points are. And I've been fortunate enough to be in the legal space for longer than I've been in business. I've been in the legal industry for 20 years. So I've pretty much seen a lot of different things. But when it comes to pain points, I like to have the person I'm speaking to identify it for themselves, because that's the first step, is identifying that there is an issue. And then I come to the next step of, okay, well, how much time is this costing you? And for almost every attorney out there, the standard these days for the hourly billable rate is 350. Even if you're doing something flat fee, that still equates to some kind of dollar value and time spent, right? So then I factor in those equations and I say, okay, well, if you're losing 5 hours a day, or maybe let's be generous here. Maybe you're losing 8 hours a week, and you do that by 350, you times that by 4 weeks, you times that by 12, it becomes a lot of money that you're spending over the course of a year for that one thing. And then you're wondering, how do I stop this? Because sometimes it's a matter of not even realizing that you're losing this amount of money or you're losing this amount of time. And you just said it, like it's the biggest, most precious asset. And sometimes we're just giving it away so freely because we don't even realize that there's a better way. And
Right.
that's usually identifying the problem and then realizing that there's a better way and how to stop it from happening, because you can't go back in time.
You cannot. And
Can't.
that is the thing about it. And when if you're listening to this podcast and you're wondering, well, I know what my hourly rate is, how much time am I losing? Just here's a quick thing that you can do. Think about and come up with a number about how many hours you spend in your firm. All sorts of stuff, like working with clients, law
Mm-hmm.
firm admin, checking email,
Mm-hmm.
like add all of it up and say about how many time or how many hours in a given week you spend in your law firm. Is it 20 hours, 40 hours, 80 hours, whatever it is. Multiply that by 52, right? You can do 50 if you're taking 2 weeks off, but multiply
Mm-hmm.
that by the number of the weeks in the year that you work. That will give you how many hours you spend in your firm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Once you have that, then what you can do is just take the income you made, take the income you made divided by the total number of hours worked, and that is your effective hourly rate.
Mm-hmm.
This is, and Casita, you probably do this with your clients too, I'm
Yep.
guessing, right? Yep.
Yes,
Like,
exactly.
have you seen, like, I've seen clients literally break down and start crying because they realize that they're earning so much less when they do all
Yeah.
of this math. It's so sad to
Yes,
see.
it is. I, yes, I've had someone either I've had a couple that were crying and I had some on the verge of tears, like choking up because you don't, and that's the one thing that they constantly say. I didn't go into business for this. I did not go into business to spend so much of my time on administrative things, and when we talk about these CRMs, the one thing that I haven't mentioned yet is automation, because that's the way that you can take the repeatable things that you're doing on a daily basis, those administrative functions that don't bring in any revenue to your business, and offset it with a system so that it can take the burden of those things so that you can free that time back up. And depending
Bingo.
on how you run your firm, there are many ways that you can leverage automation. There are many ways that you can identify simple, quick things to be able to switch it so that this repeatable thing that's costing you time, maybe even a lot of time, is now just a blip because you're not spending time on it anymore.
Yeah. And if that exercise sounds too painful for people that are listening, here's something that's a little bit less, I don't know, I guess less painful. So we talk about on this show, we talk about the 20-10-5 rule a lot, which is the amount of time you spend in a given week in your firm. 20 hours of client work, 10 hours of business development and marketing, 5 hours of admin. So for litigators, you multiply that by four and track on a monthly basis. So I think it becomes, what is that, 80, 40, 20 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then just see where your time is going. If you are over on the admin side, so instead of spending 5 hours a week of admin in your firm, you're spending, 20 hours a week in your firm.
Mm-hmm.
That could be a sign, oftentimes is a sign that you have a real systems problem.
Mm-hmm.
Your firm isn't functioning efficiently. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where a lot of the work that people like Casita can really do for you. They can come in and improve the efficiency of the systems for two reasons. One, there's more automation. The second thing is her work can probably, I'm guessing, will empower your team members, if you have any, to be able to do more so that
Yes.
you don't have to do everything.
Yes.
Um, so Casita, in your process with clients, do you do process maps? Like where do you start?
Yeah. So usually the audit is the first place that I start. We have a conversation. Obviously, we've identified the pain points. We've talked through all the things that are having them like literally drip the faucet worth of money that they're possibly losing, and then we do the audit. The audit really allows us to roll up our sleeves and do a deep diagnosis into what's going on in the system and areas where it can be improved to function more appropriately. And from there, if they decide to continue on with the engagement, then, we focus on implementing and leveraging automation and leveraging, empowering the team to be able to work more efficiently and not spend time on things that they probably shouldn't be spending time on. But also it creates a way to um, alleviate the bottleneck. We all experience it to some extent, in some way, shape, or form. But when we're trying to get to the client and there's all these things that prohibit us from getting to the client, it makes it an arduous process, right? So this audit, so to speak, is allow us to identify those bottlenecks and come up with more efficient, simplified solutions. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense too, because as a law firm grows, I guess it grows through a few different phases. And one way to think about
Mm-hmm.
that is you have the attorney and maybe a couple of assistants, but the attorney's doing most of the work. And then as the
Mm-hmm.
firm grows, the attorney has to now offload that work to team members, preferably sooner rather than later, but that's a different conversation. And so, when that's successful, it's great because now the attorney has freed up their time.
Right.
Big win.
Yes.
Um, But then the team members start to get bogged down, and sometimes either the firm doesn't perform as well or that work then ends up on the attorney's plate again. Either way, now we've got to make the team members more efficient and
Mm-hmm.
make the tasks happen in a more automated way because
Mm-hmm.
automation reduces the likelihood of mistakes.
Right.
And those mistakes cost a ton of time, right?
Yes, they do. So when you think about automation, you have to also think about as your team grows, there are task automations specifically that you can set up. So whether it's almost like a A/B type of situation, if this, then this type of scenario. So once this happens, this is what gets done. Once that task is completed, this is what gets done. So it empowers the person who's doing the work to know what comes next and not be so dependent on the managing attorney or whoever their direct report is to make sure that certain things are happening. But on the other side of that too, it also creates a way to just like a lot of the times you get someone that are doing the work and they just don't necessarily know how. And even from a document standpoint, there's documents that you can automate as well too. So they know how to prepare the document. So it's not just about, oh, do this task. It's about, okay, so here are these documents that are pre-filled with custom fields, with predetermined values that as long as you're putting them in from the beginning, they'll automatically populate to where now we're creating an environment where there are less errors. I used to work in the space of working with attorneys where you ask for a specific document and they're like, go look at this file because that's where it was last. And because I pay so much attention to detail, I'm able to make sure that there's no errors with these documents. But let's face it, we're humans. Errors are likely going to happen. But creating these custom fields to where they live embedded inside the document allows someone to at the very least know the case style for every case is going to show up every single time and know that the person's name is going to be spelled correctly as long as the client spelled their name correctly in the intake form to allow for that data to be populated appropriately. So it's not only just from a task standpoint, it's from a document generating assembly standpoint too. Everything from letters all the way up to orders and petitions. It just depends on what practice area you're in. Could even be, some estate planning documents as well too.
And Casita, if someone's listening to this, what are, I'll pick the top two or three signs that they really need to focus on their systems and could benefit from an audit?
Every single time, maybe they just hired someone and every single time they assign a task to that person, they're coming back with more questions than actual work product. That's a big indicator. They're using fragmented systems and nothing is speaking to each other to where deadlines are potentially being missed. That's a big indicator. They are this actually I know that this all these things have happened, but this one is more like right on top of my face because it just happened in a conversation with someone. You're about to do a signing in person or a closing or something in person and you review a document and the document has information from a previous case.
Oh no. Wow. Wow. And I know
That's a
that's
sign.
happened. That happens a lot. Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
And what if someone does want to contact you and see if that assessment is the right step for them? What's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, I would say that they can go to our website, simpson-assoc.com, or if they're watching this video, they can scan this QR code that's here, or they have the option of just sending us an email, hello@simpson-assoc.com. Anyway, we can help you out.
Awesome. I love the QR code. I've got to implement that as well. Casita, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. It was wonderful having you and love the topic of systems. Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much for your time today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Bye, everyone. Have an amazing day. Continue thriving with your systems.
And that's a wrap for this episode of the Lawyer Business Advantage podcast. One thing that would really help both us and other new potential listeners is for you to rate this show and leave a comment in iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you tune in to listen. And I want to hear from you, so connect with me on LinkedIn and let me know what you think of this episode. And if you are a solo or an owner of a small law firm and you're looking to earn more money, attract better clients, or reduce your stress, we would love to talk with you to see how we can help. Request your free law firm assessment by visiting lawfirmsuccessgroup.com. Again, that URL is lawfirmsuccessgroup.com. We look forward to talking with you soon. Thank you for listening. My name is Alay Yajnik. Until next time, remember, you can seize freedom, you can embrace happiness, you can build your perfect practice.